This episode is not meant to shame or guilt any parents out of using screens, but it is meant to bring awareness. I am someone who considers myself pretty crunchy, pretty holistic, and I honestly didn't really think screens were a big deal until I started to notice some behaviors in my 3-year-old that I really was not enjoying. Welcome to the Trust Issues Podcast, the show where we question everything society tells us about how to live, work, eat, and be. I'm Erica Auckland, a mom, entrepreneur, and advocate for living life on your own terms. Here we challenge the status quo, from the food we feed our families to the way that we build wealth and well-being. You'll hear unfiltered conversations with everyone from farmers, financial experts, and everyday people who are doing life differently, all with one goal: to help you live healthier, freer, and more abundant. If you've ever felt like there's more to life than following the crowd, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. First of all, his inability to cope with frustration. Now, at this age, it's super important for him to learn frustration. Whether he's building blocks or he's riding a bike, he's going to inevitably in life have frustration come upon him. And it's really important for him to know how to deal with that. But we started to notice that whenever he was frustrated, he was requesting or asking for a character on his favorite show, Curious George. Now, we are not a big TV family. We only have one TV in our house. We don't really ever turn on the TV during the day, but he was watching about 30 minutes of George during the day. And I think Curious George is a cute show, pretty harmless, not really overstimulating, not anything like Coco Melon or anything like that. But he was starting to really become addicted to this show and this character. And my biggest red flag, like I said, was him just having a hard time coping with frustration. And literally every time something would happen where he'd cry or get upset, he'd just be like, I want to watch George. And I just started looking at my husband like, this is not cool. Like, he can't just always reach for this imaginary character on TV whenever he's frustrated, because this is him looking for input when he doesn't want to just sit with his discomfort, right? And I think us as adults, we could probably resonate with that. After all, TV, screens, social media, all is dopamine hits to our system. And I think a lot of us are probably very much dopamine addicted. I know that I can be. I know that if I'm going to go and, sit on the couch for a minute, I want to grab my phone and look at what's going on in the world. And I really try to be conscious of that now, especially after we ran this experiment on my toddler. And that was one thing that we just noticed that we were not enjoying. And then overall, we just felt like he was starting to have more outbursts. And, he's 2, he's 3. Like, those things can be absolutely normal, but it just felt like it was more normal, more common than we liked. And we were just not down with that. And I am very much adamant about having a peaceful home, about having children who have manners. And I want my kids to be kids. I want them to run. I want them to play. I want them to feel like they can totally be themselves and be wild boys outside. But there is also an element of, I want to raise boys who are also gentlemen and boys that have manners. And yes, I know he's only 3, but I do believe that those patterns begin at this age. There's a very important window in the beginning of our life where we're building our cognitive development, where we're building personality, we're building boundaries. And it's really important for me to see those things and mitigate that as a parent. And so again, we were just noticing all these things. We were like, I don't like this. And I just kept feeling in my gut like we need to cut out screens. So we decided on January 1st to cut screens out. And I'm not going to lie, I wasn't sure how it was going to go because, again, he was always asking for George. But also, there were moments where we kind of relied on the screens because my husband and I both work from home to have him, sit down and watch a show while we have a Zoom call, or my husband has a meeting and I'm with the baby. I have a 6-month-old and he's, my three-year-old sometimes can be, jumping all over me while I'm breastfeeding and stuff like that. So sometimes like screens can be a way to calm everyone down. But again, I was just so committed to removing this from our life because it just kept feeling like it was causing more problems than it was helping us. So we both committed to each other to cut out screens and see what happened, and to just go as long as we possibly could without screens. Again, this was on January 1st. And I will say the first week, very much my toddler was requesting George. When he'd get frustrated, he wanted to watch George. He would ask in the morning when he'd come downstairs, can we watch George? Again, we have this big TV family, but it was very obvious that he had an addiction to George and that he wanted to watch TV because he would always ask about it. And it's winter here. What an inconvenient time to do a TV detox, right? Like, we're inside more, but I was still so adamant about, you know what? Like, if we're going to do it, it's not going to be easy, no matter how you cut it. So we're just going to do it no matter what. We'll make it work. And I'm just the type of parent who's like, I'm not making excuses. Like, we're going to make this happen. So, I just started to notice an immediate shift in him about week 2. Week 2, I started to notice that he was having more independent play. I specifically remember one afternoon, I sat him down on the couch with a book. He loves the Richard Scarry books. They're very like picture books, a lot going on. You can spot all these things. You look for this little bug called Gold Bug. Like, it's a really cute book series that I read as a kid. We have them for him. We also got him a library card during this time because we were like, we want more books in our house. And I was always a big reader. And I mean, he's a boy, so he's getting wild and wants to like jump around and make forts and all the things. But sometimes there is time to be quiet, right? And just to be able to have independent play is super important. And teaching your kids how to be bored, teaching your kids how to not have any input, any stimulation. And what do you want to do with that? And that's where imagination kicks in. And that's the other thing that I noticed is that not only was he gobbling up more books, he was sitting on the couch, like I said, sitting down with a snack, with his blanket, reading a book, reading a book for 30 minutes. One time he was sat there for like 40 minutes by himself. And I couldn't believe it because he's a very, very high energy kid. And it was like, I wouldn't dare say anything while it was happening. I just kept observing and I was like looking at my husband or texting my husband, like, this is happening. Oh my gosh, because it was so different than what we had experienced. And then the imagination part, I feel like, has exploded for him. So he's also at this age, I will say, that is very pivotal in that, he's developing so much. 2 to 3 is a big jump. He just turned 3. He's imaginative. He's telling stories. He's playing characters. He's the fireman. He's Mr. Fix-It. He grabs his toolbox. He goes in the bathroom and fixes the door handle. Like, all of these scenarios that he was acting out started to become more and more and more common because he wasn't sitting in front of a couch having input from a TV show. He had to go and make up his own fun. He had to make up his own entertainment. And that was just really cool to see. We got him a little police officer costume and a little fireman costume, and he puts them on and he goes in full character and he loves it. And I was very impressed with that. And then the other thing I noticed was just his personality, kind of he feels a little bit more balanced. He feels a little bit more, again, it's only been a month, so could have been a really great month. I don't know. But I'm just sharing my experience so far. And I will say that each week, one thing I will say to this is that each week that we don't use screens, the easier it gets. And he doesn't ask for George anymore. He doesn't even ask for the TV anymore. He's never watched YouTube. He doesn't have an iPad, so he doesn't have any of those things. But it was that TV, and he sees the remote. He doesn't try to turn it on. Like, sometimes he'd have to hide the remote because he'd try to turn it on. And so this was just something very eye-opening to me, again, as someone who kind of, we're not watching overstimulating shows. He'd watch like Winnie the Pooh every once in a while, or we'd watch this little, what was the other one? It's the Franklin, the turtle, right? Like, it was like these older shows that were part of my childhood in the 90s that are very low stimulating. Like, those shows still were really making him like just rammy. And one thing I always noticed is that when he'd watch TV, it's like he had all this input for 20 minutes. And then after that, he needed to output. And it was like higher energy, higher chaos. And I just was noticing these things, and I just was noticing what I was noticing and just saying, I don't know if I enjoy this. Like, let's see what happens if we remove it. So at the time of this recording, it's been 30 days since he has not watched any television, and he literally feels to me like a different kid. And in the best ways, not that before he was a terrible kid, but I'm just seeing so much improvement, and our house is more peaceful, and he doesn't ask for George. He's handling frustration better. He's not a perfect kid. He still gets upset. He throws things when he's mad. Like, he's 3, okay? Let's be real. He's a 3-year-old boy who still is trying to navigate all of his feelings and all of his emotions, and that's totally okay. It's okay to have those big feelings at this age, and we hold a space for it, and we're patient with it, but we also have boundaries with it. But I will say those little things that I was noticing, just him reaching for this character for comfort, was really alarming to me. And it started to make me feel like I needed to look into this more and question. So I pulled some things for you to share with you. Again, this is not to say that we're going to be a screen-free family forever. I grew up and thinking about how we used to watch the show Family Matters. We loved Family Matters. And then Full House for sure too. But Family Matters was like our favorite. Steve Urkel was so funny. And we loved watching Family Matters after dinner as a family. Like that's how I grew up. I'm a kid of the 90s and I loved those things. So I hope to have some memories like that with my kids. But I think in this season of my life with my kids at this age, screens do not benefit them. And I had to ask myself, is this benefiting him or is it harming him? And I couldn't find it being a neutral situation. Like I didn't see it being neutral because every time he was watching TV, he was just a little bit more frustrated or a little bit worse in behavior. So I wanted to share a couple things that I found on my research around screens. And I'm sure you've seen this stuff and I'm sure you're, sitting there being like, well, my kids aren't like that. But hey, let's be open-minded and maybe we can consider how it might be true for our family, or the alternative could be just that we're wanting to have healthier, more resilient, more empathic kids. Okay. So the impact of screen time on children's development. So I wrote this out that brain development is a huge one when I was doing my research. For instance, there was a study done by Cincinnati Children's Hospital. They found that high amounts of screen time actually affects brain growth and development at much earlier ages. I'm going to talk about ages in a minute around the American Academy of Pediatrics. I don't agree with them on a lot of things, but I also know that they are an entire academy of pediatrics studying children. So they have some really important things for us to know. Another thing that I found was these findings from UNICEF that suggest that screen time can inhibit young children's ability to read faces and learn social skills, which are crucial for developing empathy, right? And I've seen these videos go viral online where kids who are exposed to screen time at a young age, they actually have a hard time making eye contact. And they don't actually register the face of their primary caregiver. And I thought that was just really, really alarming. And then another thing I read was attention and cognitive function. There's a study that was published in JAMA Pediatrics, and they found a small but statistically significant correlation between screen time and attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder symptoms in children. And I was wondering to myself, because my son was kind of presenting some symptoms that I was like, okay, are you going to be ADHD or something? And I was wondering, what are the significant impacts and how many children do we have today that we have diagnosed as ADHD and they're just plugged in front of a TV for too long? They just need to get outside. They just need to get their hands in the dirt. They just need to have imagination. I think about my childhood growing up, my parents were like, go be bored, kids. Go in the backyard. I don't know, climb an apple tree, whatever. Don't come in till dinner. And I know we live in a different world because I think one thing that I talk to so many parents is and myself included, I don't feel safe my kid just playing outside by himself. Definitely not. I don't know that I did that at the age of 3, but as I got older, I'd be riding my bike around our neighborhood and I had no cell phone. My parents didn't know where I was. And that was very common and normal in the 90s. And it's not common and normal today. And, I've read studies around how children are spending, the average American child spends less than 7 minutes outside per day. And that to me is it should be, and the amount of time they're spending in front of screens was hours. And we need to flip that, right? So that was something that was very alarming to me. And then there's also the question of, stimulating shows, because some shows are more stimulating than others, which I think obviously presents a good argument. You have Coco Melon that's really stimulating, and these YouTube channels that have these characters who are very stimulating for children. Upon my research, they say people like Miss Rachel is actually pretty stimulating. I'm actually going to pull up the list that I have for you, the top stimulating shows for kids. So upon my research, I was researching around overstimulating shows because I do hear this argument of, well, my kid's not watching X or whatever, fill in the blank, right? And this is the issue with overstimulating shows. They're fast-paced shows. They typically have fast cuts. They have a lot of bright colors, high-pitched voices. chaotic music, and maybe like little to no storyline or depth. There's just a lot of them, like a lot of things going on back to back to back. And the issue with these is that they can lead to your child having more impulsivity as well as shortened attention spans. And so I was like, okay, what are some of these top shows that are super overstimulating? Because I mean, they're got to be super, common for kids. And Coco Melon came up as the top one. Baby Shark, Ryan's World. Some of these I don't even know. Choo Choo TV, Blippy. And this is me asking Chat GPT, by the way. So it's like, it's not just me making this list up. Blippy, which I know is a really popular one. Diana and Roma, Masha and the Bear, Morphle. I don't know what that is. And then these are some shows that ChatGPT actually says to watch with caution. Paw Patrol, Peppa Pig, SpongeBob, Pokemon, LOL Surprise Series, The Amazing World of Gumball, Teen Titans Go. And then there's a list of what to watch instead. So I wanted to give you like lower stimulating shows that are calm, they're engaging, and they have educational stories. There are better alternatives if this feels right for you and your family. Bluey, they say it's more gentle and imaginative. Daniel Tyrer's Neighborhood, more slow paced and social and like much more emotional. Puffin Rock, Sarah and the Duck, Little Bear. I grew up watching Little Bear. I loved Little Bear. Franklin and Friends, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, which we all loved, right? So, I think this is something just to consider because there's a lot of research that indicates that these certain high stimulation shows can contribute to behavioral problems. And, you may be putting your kid in front of a show and you're like wondering later, why are they having these outbursts? Why are they so irritated? Why are we having this, every single day? We started noticing this every single day, 5:00, we called it the witching hour. And it was because it was at this certain part of the day where he was kind of offloading the rest of his energy that he hadn't gotten out yet. Upon my research that I was doing about what is this witching hour with toddlers, and a lot of it comes from they still have this energy they need to off put. They need to do heavy work. A lot of occupational therapists call it that. And I was very, very just eye-opened. Like, wow, okay, I'm glad that my mama gut was on the right path, but I just wasn't fully aware of some of these things. And I also wanted to pull up for you the American Academy of Pediatrics, their guidelines that they have. So they say under 18 months, they recommend avoiding the use of screens completely, except for if you're going to video chat with someone, like video chatting with a family member who might be far away. So, a grandparent or something, but 100% 18 months and younger, no screen time. 18 months to 24 months, they say that if parents choose to introduce digital media, it should be high quality programming and parents should watch it with their children to help them understand what they're seeing. So again, this is 18 to 24 months. You're not just putting your kid in front of a show and being like, mommy's got to get something done. They're saying that you need to be with them and watch, one of these shows, watching Franklin or watching Puffin Rock with them. Ages 2 to 5, limit screen use to 1 hour per day of high quality programming. Co-viewing is encouraged to help children understand and apply what they see. That's from the Mayo Clinic. And then ages 6 and older, place consistent limits on the time you spent using media and the types of media that they're using. Ensure screen time does not interfere with adequate sleep, physical activity, and other behaviors essential to health. So this is just, again, like, man, my kid was 2 and, he wasn't watching more than that. He wasn't watching more than an hour, but he was presenting all these behavioral things that they talk about that it wasn't right for him. And so I just encourage you to pay attention to your kids and maybe this is right. So this is other thing it says that I researched because I have a lot of people who are like, well, is all screen time bad? Because there's obviously duration and frequency. So it says that not all screen time is detrimental. The content's quality is obviously significantly more important than anything. So if you're going to have your kid watch something, make it more educational, more interactive. That can be beneficial. One thing I will say, though, is because we just chose that we didn't want to do screens anymore. We want to be a screen-free family for our boys for a while. We just decided to do podcasts. So if my son is drawing, he's playing with Play-Doh, he's reading, we do podcasts. And there's one called Garden Keeper Gus that is really cute. And it's just these little stories of a little boy who has a pet squirrel and they go in the garden. And so he can like hear these words and imagine things as he's listening. I listen to that one with him on Spotify. So if I'm sitting and drawing with him or something, we'll play that and turn it on. Another one that he likes is, her name is Miss Katie, and she is someone who does, it's imagination with Miss Katie. And she just is someone who's like, we're walking in the jungle, like, oh, we see this animal. It's really cool because she has little songs that she does, and we'll do that instead. And then we just play music. We play worship music, kids music, and we have a dance party. So I just want to encourage you that if you're like, I don't want to do screen time anymore either, Erica. Okay, like give me ideas. We're going to get to that, but that's something we have done. So there's no screen involved, but it is audio. And then obviously every child is unique. And that was the one thing that upon my research, I kept researching, like, is this across all kids? And they say most kids are going to be unique in their own situation, but be aware because during these early years, it's so crucial to be aware of their exposure to things because all that input has to go somewhere. And again, for at least my child, I started noticing all that input he was getting, he needed almost like a double output afterwards to get all that energy out. So just a little tidbit there. And so for us, at this point, like we're not doing screens. I think that one of the things that we're aware of is being role models with this because obviously my husband and I, we both work on our phones and we've really tried to be mindful. Like I don't want my son seeing me on my phone all the time, but he's not allowed to watch TV. Like that doesn't make sense. So I'm really trying to be very mindful. And when I do have to do something for work, I say, hey, Bubba, mommy's got to do something for work. I'm going to be on my phone for the next 20 minutes. Would you like to read a book? I'm going to give you a snack. And like we have clear boundaries around it. And then I also just really want to give him the space to have unstructured playtime. So reading, play, I just sit him down with something. And then I also just let him like discover what he wants to do or just be bored. And I found that that's been so helpful for him in his development. Like he's just really finding his own little things that he's into through that. If you followed me for any amount of time, you know that I have struggled with acne in the past and I've done pretty much everything to cure my acne, from expensive lasers, skincare, taking internals, getting Dutch test hormones, gut tests done, literally everything you can imagine. I even at one point cut out dairy for 8 years of my life because I believe that dairy was the culprit for my acne. And of course, I did some internal healing, but I will say that dairy was not one of my triggers and might not be one of yours. But acne for me was something that really, really was a challenge to navigate because I felt on many occasions like I didn't want to leave the house because of how bad my skin was. I will remember so many times just looking in the mirror, not recognizing myself and, maybe having plans to go somewhere and just literally saying last minute, I'm not going to go because of how bad my skin was. And again, back to the skincare, there's so many different brands and companies that market their products for acne that actually contain hidden ingredients that are pore clogging. There is a pore clogger checker that you can actually look at all of your current products. So if you are someone who's using acne products, but you're still breaking out, you might want to check all the ingredients for the things that you're using because they could very well be clogging your pores. I know this was happening for me. It wasn't until December of 2023 that I switched all of my skincare over to Clear Stem skincare. And honestly, it changed my life. And I don't say that lightly because if you've had acne, you know exactly how devastating it can be and how self-conscious you can be about your skin. And I always will remember that one of my goals in life was just to be able to like spend a spring or summer going and doing outdoor stuff without having to load on my acne. So it was December of 2023. I switched all of my skincare over to Clear Stem. I actually have some of the products here right now that are some of my favorites that I literally can't live without. And it changed my skin forever. I started to notice in the beginning a little bit of purging. And then after that, my skin started to clear up. Now, right now, I'm really working on my acne scarring, some of the dark pigment, and some of the marks that are left behind from really bad breakouts, but my skin is breakout free. Of course, I'm human. I'll have an occasional breakout, something that comes up from maybe something that I've eaten or a stressful time in my life. I am a mom after all, but I'm telling you that ClearStem is legit, okay? ClearStem is anti-aging products that are also anti-acne, which is really hard to find because most anti-aging products contain pore cloggers and most acne products are aging. So I, for example, spent years and years using benzoyl peroxide, not realizing that benzoyl peroxide is very aging for your skin. So these are a couple of my favorite products. I love the Hydroglow moisturizer. It has bakuchiol, it has stem cells and squalane. It's really hydrating, but really light. Obsessed with this product. Again, it is zero pore cloggers. I also love that they don't use any toxins in their products or parabens and anything that's going to disrupt your hormones. And then they have some serums. Two of my favorite serums that I can't live without is my Clarity serum. This is my acne clearing serum. I put this on every single night on a bare skin, my bare face before I put on anything else. I let it seep in for about 10 to 15 minutes so that it can do its magic. And it also has vitamin C in it and turmeric. Super brightening. It's helping with some of the pigment that I have. But if I have a breakout or if I notice my skin just feels a little bit like clogged, they call this the blackhead dissolver. I swear to you, it literally dissolves all the gunk in your pores. It's incredible. Again, it has no pore cloggers. And then the other product I can't live without is the Cell Renew Serum. This has stem cells, reishi, and hyaluronic acid. So during the day, I put this on, but I also put this on right after I put my Clarity Serum on because it just hydrates my skin right before I put on my moisturizer. So I am obsessed with ClearStem. If you want to try their products, you can head to their website, clearstem.com/Erica. Use my code Erica Auckland for a discount at checkout. Make sure you try some of these products. If you have any other recommendations, you can always DM me, but I'm telling you, the products are absolutely incredible. And even if you're not someone who struggles with acne, they're going to help you have brighter, healthier, younger looking skin. So check out ClearStem at clearstem.com/Erica. Use my code Erica Auckland at checkout. I think that if you're going to approach a screen-free lifestyle, you are going to have to figure out what are some other things that your kids can do. And for us, it's always getting outside because I don't have to entertain my kid if we're outside. We can go to a park and he's going to run and play. He can dig in a ditch. He can find some rocks. He can find a frog, like find a worm, find a bug. He's got a whole bug catcher situation. And I think that's another thing too, is like parents, you do have to let your kids be wild and free and let them play and explore and get messy. And, you know, I always remember this quote by Jordan Peterson, and he says, let children do dangerous things carefully. So for me, that looks like, you know, I'm not hovering at the playground. I'm not, you know, hovering when he is walking, you know, through the rocks in the creek. Like, you know, obviously I'm not going to let my kid be in danger, but I do want him to feel that independence of he can figure things out to do. And that outdoor exploration is so important. We try to do nature walks. One fun thing I'll do is when we do a nature walk, which again, I'm getting in my steps, I'm getting my mom walk in, which feels really great. I'll do like a little paper that I'll write a treasure hunt on it. So literally write like, okay, here's X marks the spot. Along the way, we need to find one rock. We need to find one brown leaf. We need to find one red flower, depending on the season of the time of the year, the season, right? We will write this little list out and he loves it. It's like so much fun for him. So those things I find are just the absolute best from all the research that I have done. The best thing we can do for our kids is get them outside. The best thing we can do for our kids is promote outdoor centric lifestyles. And it's going to start with us. It starts with us being outdoor centric. It starts with us getting off our phones. It starts with us getting outside. And if our kids see us play, if our kids see us explore, they're going to do the same thing. Obviously, reading, we got our toddler a library card. So he's been reading a ton and that's really fun. He looks forward to picking new books each week. Love a local public library. And so thankful for those library workers and, you know, artsy stuff. He's kind of into, I mean, he's not really, he's a boy. So sometimes he'll play with Play-Doh for 20 minutes. Sometimes he doesn't care at all and he just wants to run and be wild. And that's that's okay too. Sometimes if that's the energy that he's in, we're having rumpus time. We're making a fort with all of our cushions from our couch. We are going to really like serve him where he's at, because it is important for him as a boy to have rough play. And he does a lot of that with my husband. But, I think all kids need that. All kids need to be able to use their physical bodies, and they need to know and test their own strength. We do have a garage gym, and we have this thing we got in the backyard. It's been a little cold, so we haven't been out there as much, but we got him like a Ninja Warrior set. So it's this like long slack line, and it has like a pull-up bar, it has rings, it has like a climbing ladder. And I think all of that to me is like, that's the kid I want to raise. I want to raise a child who is physically strong. He knows how to test his physical limits. He's outdoor exploring. He's not inside. I don't want a video game kid. I don't want a kid who's on his phone all the time or knows more about a YouTuber than he does real people in real life. I think that we need to raise children who have outdoor skills, who can, if their car breaks down, do they know what to do? If, they're hungry, do they know how to make a meal? Do they know how to cut their own vegetables? And that's another thing I will say that has helped tremendously, is I involve my child in as much as I can in the kitchen. And so if I am cooking dinner, I'm like, here's the cucumber, I got him this, well, actually a friend of ours got him this whole set of knives and these kitchen utensils, and he is able to be right alongside me prepping dinner. And I think that that's the one thing about children, is that I have learned, and I'm new at this. I'm still learning every single day, but from my experience and my observancy, as well as my own research, is that children love when you give them a duty, when you give them a job, because it makes them feel important. It makes them feel like they're part of the tribe. And if you think about it in in a primal way, we are this own little tribe that we have, mother, father, and children, and each one has to carry their own weight. And when you imprint that into your kids at a young age, I do truly feel like, I look at my childhood that I had, and I was always given jobs. I was always given responsibilities. And I do feel like that impacted me for the rest of my life and for years to come. And it made me who I am today. So that's great. I also think there's great, sensory play stuff. I think that's all awesome. But I think the thing is like, at the end of the day, it's encouraging your kids to be playful, play, independent play. I'm reading this book right now. It's called Free to Learn by Peter Gray. And I wrote down some of these quotes. He says in his book, children are biologically designed to educate themselves through play and exploration. And I think that that's just like, we are so adamant about like educating our kids. And, this is my take on how I want to raise my kids. And hey, the podcast title, it's called Trust Issues. I have trust issues with how society tells us to school our kids, how to raise our kids. And I think that we are pushing and enforcing cognitive development on kids way too soon, whereas if we are encouraging them to get outside, use their bodies, play, jump, climb a tree, build a mud pit, whatever, we are going to encourage them to educate themselves. And play is nature's way of ensuring that young human beings learn the skills they need to develop into effective adults. He says that in the book as well. And then there's one other quote that I wrote. And he said, children are the best learners in the world until we teach them otherwise. And so you don't have to teach your kid to learn. You let them play, and they will learn on their own. And I just thought that was just a really great way to wrap up this episode, and just super insightful for me. In my own parenting, I'm constantly learning. I constantly feel like I'm messing up. I constantly feel like I'm like trying to do better. I'm reading parenting books. I'm talking to other parents, but this was something that I just really noticed, like, wow, I think this does make a huge difference, and it does matter, I think, more than I was giving it credit. And I was just thinking screens aren't that big of a deal. And in fact, they are. And I think we do need to be mindful about, the children that we want to raise, and not to say you have to be screen free. Again, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that maybe consider, is this helping or is it not? Is it negative? Is it positive? If it's neutral, cool. For us, it was negative. And that's where I realized this isn't working right now. Maybe we'll come back to this later, but right now it's not working. So I just want to encourage all parents that you're doing a great job. It's really hard out there. I know that between jobs, paying bills, raising kids, getting them to extracurricular activities, dropping them off at school, trying to make dinner, trying to clean your house. Gosh, it is literally so hard. I think that's why having a village is so important. But you as your own family unit, if you and your husband could get on board together with the kids that you want to raise, I think it'll make your journey tremendously more impactful and also easier for you. But also just know, like, even if you took a 1 millimeter shift in your home and made like one tiny decision, maybe it was like, hey, we're not watching TV on Tuesdays, or, we're going to do this differently on Wednesdays, whatever. I do think those little things matter because they compound. So I just want to encourage you. You're doing a great job. Parenting is no joke. I'm here with a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and I'm still not really like parenting, right? Like I feel like I'm just learning parenting in this season. But if you have young kids, I hope it encourages you. And I hope that it just helps you feel normal if you're like, I don't think this is working for my family, because it certainly wasn't for us. So thanks for listening to this episode. If it gives you insights, if it makes you think, if it makes you, even if it pisses you off, that's totally cool too. Let me know. Leave a review. I would love to hear from you. Leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and leave a comment. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Please share this episode out. Please share it with a friend, with a family member, screenshot it, post it on your Instagram story, tag me. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time.